Welcome to the Ashland 2020 Local Election Debate Forum. This debate event is a project of the We Love Ashland's Citizen Committee and the Friends of the Ashland Library in cooperation with WACA-TV. My name is Makita Keegan, and I'm your moderator. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We'll be hearing from candidates from library trustees running for library trustee, Board of Health, Planning Board, Assessor, School Committee, and Select Board. But first, a little information about the upcoming election. The annual town election will be held Wednesday, June 24th, 2020, at the Ashland High School between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. The last day to register to vote is Friday, June 12th, 2020. You can request a ballot to vote by mail. And in an effort to keep voters and election workers safe, they are encouraging us to do so. Please submit a 2020 municipal election early ballot application that can be found on the town website at ashlandmass.com. If you're not able to print out the application, you can send in any written form of correspondence with your signature requesting a ballot. They can't process applications without your signature. So when you're done, you can email your application to townclerkoffice@ashlandmass.com. Once you receive your ballot, you can take all voted ballots can be placed in the payment box outside of Town Hall. Please ensure that your signature is on the ballot envelope and kindly don't fold your ballot. It will fit nicely. For more information about voting, please visit the town website at ashlandmass.com, including information on how to register to vote. And as you all know, it's so important to participate in local elections. Truly, on a local level, you can make your voice heard. So make sure you get out there and make sure you vote so that you have a say in how your town is run. Now I'll go over some of the ground rules for tonight's debate, and then we'll get to the candidates. So the rules are as follows. Each candidate gets 2 minutes for an opening statement. Each question gets a 60-second response or 90 seconds for more complex questions. That's at my discretion. There is an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal following completion of responses. And I do want to let folks know that we are taking questions from the public live during the event while this event is airing. You can drop your question either via email at candidatesforum@friendsoftheapl.com, or if you're watching us on Facebook Live, you can ask your question right there on the Around the Clock page. So the only other thing I'd like to do before we launch into our candidates tonight is to ask everyone to be a little patient. This is a very new and novel way of trying to make sure that voters in Ashland are informed and are able to make a good choice about the election. I'm sure a lot of us would prefer to be doing this in person, but we're relying on remote technology to make sure that you can meet all of our candidates. That being said, it is a new and novel process. I apologize in advance for any glitches or bugs, but we're going to do the best we can to make sure that you get the information as voters that you need. All right. So the first part of our program will be a discussion with those who are running for uncontested office. And we'll be talking to, I'm just going to list the candidates and then I'll call them up one by one. They're going to go alphabetically. And then for their closing statement, we're going to run opposite of that. We're going to run in the opposite direction. So we'll be hearing from Carolyn Bell for Library Trustee, Ron Eskovitz, Board of Health, Lakshmi Krishnan for Planning Board, David Rosenbloom for Assessor, and Lori Tosti for School Committee. So at this time, I'd like to call to the stage, as it were, Carolyn Bell, Library Trustee. Carolyn, can you put on your camera? Hi, how are you?
Good.
Okay, so we are going to launch into our first question. And the first question that I have for you is, why are you running for this? Why are you running for this office?
You know, I really like being library trustee. Is this my 2 minutes?
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. do your 2-minute opening statement and then we'll get into the questions.
Okay.
For folks to be patient. It's a little different. I'm sorry, Carolyn.
I originally ran in 1996, I think it was, because there were no computers in the library and nobody really went to the library. They went on their way to Framingham. And nobody understood the need for a library when you had Framingham. And I also thought maybe there would be some challenges having to do with books and censorship. And as it turned out, there was never a question about censorship, but it became very obvious very soon that the library was not working as a library in our town. In fact, when my boys were young, I used to say to them, we'll go into the library, we will get the books, you touch nothing, and then we leave. Because it was dank, it was in the basement, it was all beige, it was not a good place. And so then we started pushing for a new library. And it took us almost, well, maybe eight years to finally get there. And then at some point it became a search for a good director. And it turned out that we all on the search committee unanimously selected Paula Benetti, and turned out she was more than we hoped for. And then over a period of years, we just got cut to the bone. We had a series of different town managers who looked in another direction and couldn't understand the need for a library, and we couldn't even make minimal standards and lost state funding as a result.
30 seconds.
How many, 30?
30, yep.
And finally, we got Michael Herbert, who looked and said the library is a valuable place. And now we do have computers and we do have various programs like Canopy and Hoopla, and you'll have to find out, they're wonderful. And now our newest challenge
15
is
seconds.
the pandemic, and we're going to have to deal with that and maybe more funding issues. So it's been a challenge. You don't just sit there and nod. Unless you have a really good director, it makes it easier for you.
That's it. You just came in right under the wire. So I think you may have answered my first question when you did your opening statement. So I'm going to ask you another one. Community participation can be a challenge in local government. How do you feel that, if increased participation does occur on this election cycle, how do you think it would affect the board or the committee that you're running for a position on?
I'm not sure what the question is.
So, getting people involved is tough sometimes. Do you think that will impact how you operate as a library trustee, having more people involved in the process and involved in the town in general?
I discovered early on, I started out as a person who didn't like to ask people for help. I thought I should do it myself. And then I very quickly discovered, like with the building committee and, there was an architect on the committee, but all kinds of good people have come forward. We have lots of volunteers at the library. And of course we have the friends as well. And I have found that if you just ask somebody, people volunteer and are very willing to be helpful.
So I'm sorry, go ahead. Were you done with your response?
Yeah. We haven't had a problem with people like the library and they see it's valuable. They like bringing their children there. It's now a warm, welcoming, lovely place to be. Not the place it was when my kids were little.
Okay.
It hadn't been touched in like almost 100 years.
30 seconds, well, more like 20 seconds. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. The role of a committee member on any board or committee in town is to represent the Ashland community in decisions. In what ways will your particular community outreach, specifically on the library, will help you bring the community's perspectives into committee trustee discussions?
Well, we have a lot of programs and a lot of people coming to the library. For instance, the book sales. We have lots of people. And when I'm there, I'm usually moving in and out, trying not to harass them to buy a certain book, but just to talk to them. And you do find out what people think of the library. I think for the most part, it's extremely well run. We have a very accessible director who people know her and can talk to her. And so if there are issues, we know about them.
Okay. Another question for you. As a library trustee, actually, as a library trustee, how do you see your role in the larger community?
I think the library is a major part of the library of the community. You know, when people said, I don't understand why we need a library and would drive just on by, it has turned out that it really is a center. It's people gather there, people interact there. There are book clubs, there are discussion groups, there are movies, and people talk there. Some people come for a little social thing before the movie, sometimes after. There's documentary discussions. It isn't a place that just has books. It's just not like that. We have a little cafe where you can come, you can have lunch with your children while you're using the children's room.
15 seconds.
It's a wonderful resource for the community. I know there's a senior center, but that's different. But here you're bringing children for the first time and introducing them to the world of the library and books.
I'm sorry, I'll have to ask you to stop your answer. So, alrighty. So, next question. What are the top 3 issues for the library trustees, as you see it, will face over the coming year?
Well, the first thing is having to be, this whole distancing situation is difficult for everybody on a personal level and in the library, and we're going to have to work that out. Right now, the books that are available from the library itself onto the sidewalk into your car. And when it's open, there are going to be plexiglass screens. There's going to be, hand sanitizers. The staff will have masks. The books, Paula has the staff put the books over for 72 hours and are not touched. And then they're brought out again. There are all kinds of, so the pandemic has been a real challenge for the library. And we hope to start at some point the interlibrary loan, which is, we're part of 41 libraries. And so that's been a real loss. But the pandemic
15 seconds.
Financing is probably going to be a problem, but maybe not initially because of the stabilization fund that Michael Herbert has managed to put together with the select people. I think that's mainly
I'm sorry, what? You just came up with line. Time's up. All right. So a few other questions for you. Based on the question that I just asked about the issues that you'll be facing over the next year, what kinds of skills and talents and experiences do you specifically bring that you think would uniquely address those issues?
Well, probably my love of the library, my enthusiasm for the library. I've been there long enough so that I call myself the institutional memory. Somebody wanted to take the parking space in front of the library for some kind of building. And I remembered that we had promised, in order to get our grant from the state, we had promised so many dedicated spaces. And we couldn't lose those dedicated spaces. So it was good to have somebody who remembered that we needed that. So I think it's good to have some kind of sense of where we've come from and where we want to go.
Hey, thanks for answering that question. So we've been talking a lot about your particular knowledge of the library. And so topical knowledge and experience is a huge benefit when discussing and debating and making decisions about the direction of the library, in this rapidly changing world. How do you plan to stay aware of some of the current happenings with how libraries are bringing value to communities? And this is your last question.
Well, I think all the way along, well, first of all, I go to libraries. I mean, I love to visit libraries all over the state. I've been in libraries from, you know, Berlin to Longmeadow, and I love Waltham, and I go to lots of libraries and see, just kind of know what they're doing. And then, of course, Paula belongs to the MBLC, and so she goes to meetings, and you read about libraries, just, you know, like the library book. You just read about libraries because things are going on in libraries. It's not the way it used to be.
Carolyn Bell, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You can turn off your video now, and I'll be calling Ron Eskovitz from the Board of Health to the stage.
Hi, Nikita.
Thank you. There you are. Making sure your video works.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So you have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and that can start right now.
Okay. Hello, my name is Ron Eskovitz, and I'm running for a second 3-year term on the Ashland Board of Health. I've gained valuable experience during my first term and wish to continue to contribute. The board is a diverse 5-member volunteer group. We have a good working relationship within our board, and we work collaboratively with other boards and town officials, especially with the current COVID-19 situation. Our goal is to uphold our mission statement, which is to protect and promote the health, environment, and well-being of the town of Ashland residents and visitors. Anything that has to do with health is covered by the board, monitoring communicable diseases such as tuberculosis cases and the current COVID-19 pandemic, to name a few. We receive daily updates from the Mass DPH and from Sergeant Berman, who is keeping track of all local cases, especially in our at-risk long-term care facilities. I'm proud to have been part of the board that mandated testing for all residents and healthcare workers in our long-term care facilities, as well as making masks mandatory in public places prior to the order from the Baker-Polito administration. Typical everyday Board of Health responsibilities include inspecting restaurants and grocery stores to ensure food safety. We reviewed landfill monitoring data, including the Nyanza site. In the summer months, both tick and mosquito-borne illnesses are monitored, as is the water quality at Ashland State Park. I'm particularly proud of our tobacco regulations. Our board banned all flavored tobacco products 6 months prior to the state mandate. We review any violations of underage tobacco sales by local merchants and encourage best practices. I'm interested in continuing to be a liaison to decisions at a coalition which is designed to prevent youth smoking and substance abuse. Future considerations of the board, to name a few, include expanding the role of the town nurse and looking to increase the Medical Reserve Corps membership. I look forward to continuing to serve the community to make our town as safe as possible.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah.
Now to the questions. And we have one question that was submitted. What is one change that you'd like to see happen within your committee or board as soon as you're, well, in your case, you've been serving on the Board of Health, but as soon as you were to resume office? And how will you personally make sure that that change is accomplished?
One of the biggest things that we've been fighting for a while are increased revenues and resources for our town Board of Health, because we'd like to be proactive instead of reactive. So we've been doing this for a number of years, and I guess if you keep knocking on the door many times, hopefully at some point, you know, that door will get answered, and we'll be able to appropriate more funds to be more proactive rather than reactive. So we have one health agent for our entire town and a part-time nurse, which is only a few hours a week, and also a part-time food inspector. So we could be instituting or implementing more policies to help keep the town safer and be more proactive if we had more resources to deal with. So that's one of my top priorities.
So speaking of priorities, and I asked Carolyn about this as well. What are your top 3 issues for the board that you see coming over the next year or so for Board of Health?
So some of the things we're working on now is we're we do have a part-time health nurse, and she actually does a lot more than people probably realize, especially monitoring communicable diseases that take a long time, to monitor, whether it's a tuberculosis case, flu cases, checking on elderly with these things, COVID-19 cases, the tracing of those things, all that takes a lot of time. Additionally, we had, basically lost our ability to send school age kids to Framingham to get vaccinations. So we're trying to start that up again in the community. That is definitely one top priority, to be able to increase the health nurse to be able to provide those services, so we don't have to depend on other communities. We're looking at regionalizing that to help save costs with other towns that don't necessarily need.
I'm sorry, Ron, your time is up.
Okay.
So, but there are plenty more questions.
Yeah, okay.
Another question that has come up is, how do you see the role of the Board of Health and their interactions with town staff? What kind of relationship is that? And could you describe how you would ideally like to see that relationship?
Well, personally, I think we have a good relationship, with the town staff. I certainly don't know everybody, but, our chair, works at the town office, Diane Mortensen. I've met Michael Herbert multiple times, and Steve Mitchell, who I know is a candidate. And we get a chance to speak about things. Our health department, Mark Oram and Laura Clifford, are terrific. Obviously, they're at every meeting. We take our direction and our day-to-day operations from them, and we just try to, see if we can really help them, implement any changes that may be necessary from a law standpoint, or to help make their jobs easier, and see if we can all collaborate. I think it's a good working system.
So I'm sorry, Ron, your time is up.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're having a little lag in timing, and I try to give you a little bit more warning, but
I got you.
So, but like I said, there are plenty more questions. So, given in the age of COVID, information about this disease and other communicable diseases seem to be just rapidly changing day by day. And again, just being able to keep on top of these things with the topical knowledge and experience, it's a huge benefit when you're serving on a board on a town to address these issues. So how do you plan to make sure that the Board of Health stays on top of these current happenings? And do you have any specific actions around that, or recommendations around that?
Yeah, well,
and this is your last question.
Yeah, okay. It's relatively easy for us. We get updates from Mark Oram whenever there's an issue, who's the health agent. We are all directly tied into the Mass Department of Public Health emails. So if there's anything that's of urgent concern, we know about it, or Mark tells us about it. By training, I'm a podiatrist, so I have resources at work where Partners Healthcare, basically informs me if there's anything specific.
30 seconds.
So I think everybody's in the loop.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, so that was your last question. Thank you so much for answering it. You'll be back for your closing statement, but in the meanwhile, I'll ask you to please take leave of the stage.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will call up Lakshmi Krishnan, who is running for planning board. Lakshmi, can we get your video going? Let's make sure you're all set.
Hi, Makita.
Hello. Okay. So, thank you for getting your video working. And we are going to start with your 2-minute opening statement. So you can start that right now.
Hi. So my name is Lakshmi Krishnan. My husband and I have lived in Ashland with our 2 kids for 20 plus years in Ashland. I'm a CPA by profession, and I work as a VP of tax at an insurance company in Boston. So my profession has trained me to analyze issue researched regulatory authority and then come up with a solution based on the facts and regulations. And that's the skill I plan to bring to the planning board. Also, I am not associated with any real estate development or construction or realty business, so I have no conflict of interest. So that is what I bring to the planning board. Over the years, personal or professional, I have tried to serve the community, whether as chair of the Ashland Culture Council for 2 terms or volunteering for events such as AEFI or Dragonfly festivals. So I have been doing this for the last years. These experiences have motivated me to try to contribute more to the community. Hi, Makita.
Yep, we can still hear
Hello?
you. Yep, we can still hear you, but we can't see your video too well. Can you still hear us? Oh.
Hi, Makita.
Yep. Are you still here? Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. Did we lose, or do you want me? I don't know what happened.
No, it's okay. Honestly, we've got a little trouble with your picture right now, but we could hear most of your audio. So if we can, yeah, I think it's
to my cell phone, if that helps. Instead of doing it on tablet.
What I think we're gonna do.
But I need Barbara to let. Yeah.
Right. I don't think that there's much of anything we can do with your webcam. What we could do is try to have you do your opening statement again. I don't know if it's no. or we could just you have about 45 seconds left on your opening statement, or maybe we can just directly go to questions.
Yeah. So what I can do is I'm switching over to my phone, so I'll switch off from here. So.
Okay, well, all right. So you have a bit of a pause with Lakshmi Krishnan, and this.
Okay, so I'm back. I'll just.
Okay, and now we're back. Okay, so so like I said, you have 45 seconds. Yeah, you have 45 seconds left on your opening statement, or you can go to questions. I'm going to leave that up to you, however you want to do it.
Okay, so.
And I'm still having some technical difficulties with
try to
yeah.
Okay.
Can
I use my cell phone to log in? Like if Barbara can.
Well, I think what you can do, what we can do is what we'll do right now is we may actually get you, or you could just use your audio if that might help. I'm getting some technical guidance from our crew at WACA right now.
Let me do just audio then. Okay.
Maybe we can just do audio. That might be helpful. So I'll try one more time.
Now I wanted to contribute more, so my kids are grown up. I have the.
So what I'm saying is we're still kind of hearing you choppy. So Lakshmi, what we're going to do is have you call in on your phone and we'll loop back to you, Lakshmi, and we're going to go to the next candidate, and then we'll loop back to you and try you again, maybe just on the phone. I'm sorry. Right. And I apologize.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. So Lakshmi, if you could leave the stage, and the next candidate that we have is David Rosenbloom, who is running for assessor. Lakshmi, can you shut your phone off video? Because we can't. Lakshmi, can you? Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Hello, David.
Ida, how are you?
I'm doing well. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement. You can start right now.
Okay, hi, I'm David Rosenbloom. I'm running for re-election for a 3-year seat on the Board of Assessors. And I've enjoyed the finishing up almost at the end of 3 years, and really have had a good time on the Board of Assessors. The Board of Assessors to be an assessor, there's training you have to, one has to do. And I really have enjoyed it. It's, I think it was about 20 hours of online training with some, and the exams were not easy, but I'm learning and still am. My background is in computer systems. I've done work on registries of deeds, where all the deeds and mortgages and so on are filed. And that's how the town finds out that you've sold your house and changes over to the new person. Also, in terms of my experience, I get tax bills from the town. I think that's, I can appreciate that, and everybody else who's getting them. I do enjoy serving on the board, and with the other two members, the assessors. And actually, in the assessing, the 99% of the work, maybe more toward 100, is done by the assessing department itself. Rich Ball.
30 seconds, David.
Rich Ball, professional assessor, and June and Terry in the office. And anything else here? No, okay.
Okay. Next question. What's most important to you about being on this particular board?
Well, I think service to the town. It's not, compared to other boards, it's not that time consuming, frankly, but it's something that has to be done, and I'm happy to do it. And I do enjoy the issues with assessing and so on. And also, you know, to when there are issues, there aren't too many issues. Things are pretty straightforward, but when there are, to seriously, you know, consider what's being brought for us and say what we have to say.
30 seconds. Is that, are you done? Okay. Great. Another question. Name another board or committee here in town which you think would be helpful to work closely with that would benefit both boards and committees.
From the Board of Assessors, we're pretty independent. I think, though, a key thing is commercial properties and the planning board. We certainly get the result of what the planning board has authorized, and there it is, and it gets the property gets valued and so on, not by the board but by professionals. But we're otherwise, I think we have a straightforward purpose, not too much interaction. For example, and after we sign
15
off,
seconds.
Okay, after we sign off, everything is passed to the treasurer's office, and then the tax bills go out. Okay.
Going back to your background, you said that you were in systems for many years. So you know that, basically any kind of topical knowledge and experience can be a huge benefit when you're serving on a board, when you're discussing or debating or making decisions. So again, how do you stay aware of what's happening around town, around industries in town and such, to inform your ability to do the assessor's position?
It's hard to say. Just being in town and involved in just seeing what's going on, checking out the Cirrus apartments, for example. Unfortunately, seeing things like the new storage facility, downtown. I won't say much about that. And
30 seconds. Last question, David.
Okay.
Is that it? Are you finished with your answer?
Yeah.
Fantastic. David, that was your last question. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer those. And we're going to move on to our next candidate, and that's going to be Lori Tosti for the school committee. Lori, can you come to the stage, as it were? Get your video working?
Here I am.
Very good. There you are. All right. We have a couple of questions here specifically for school committee. But
did you want me to do an opening statement first?
But first, yep. But first, we've got your 2-minute opening statement. So please go ahead.
I don't know that I have 2 minutes. And I've been around for a while, so there might be a few folks that know a little something about me already. This would be my 4th term on the school committee, so that means I've just started my 10th year. I've had a leadership position the whole time. The first 2 years I was vice chair, and then I've been chair ever since. I have my husband and I have been living in Ashland for almost 30 years, and we're moved here from Framingham. So we're Metro West locals, and we raised 4 children here in Ashland, and all 4 of my kids graduated from Ashland High. And I first came on school committee because my kids were getting to the age where I found that I could become more involved. I was kind of something I decided to do after I brought my head up for air after being busy with 4 kids, and they all had different needs and different experiences in the school system, and some even attended a couple of other schools. So with that and my professional background, I'm an attorney, and I was looking for some place to find a good fit for my skill set. So that's why I chose to run the first time. And since then, it's really just been, I've learned the job, I've gained momentum, I've worked with lots of different people, and decided to just do it again because I have a lot
15 seconds.
Yeah. So here I am, back again.
Back again.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have quite a few questions for you, and some of them are from viewers. So let's start with, again, in this shifting world, there are a lot of things that are new. What do you see as the top 3 issues of the board that you're running for will face over the coming year?
Well, certainly our response to the COVID pandemic has had to become number 1, front and center, and everything around that. Well-being of our children and our families, how we're going to deliver education, how it's going to look when we go back in the fall, all of those things. So that really has we had a plan, and now that's our plan for the most part, while still being the other things that are always important, budget and how we use our resources to not just
30 seconds.
Yeah, that. And I guess 3rd would be social, emotional health of our students has been a big priority of ours for a while now, and that's going to apply no matter whether we're working on the pandemic or not. So
15 seconds.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, fantastic. We have a viewer question for you. Serena Lilly asks, what, if any, changes or improvements do you believe need to be made to address biases and systematic racism in the schools? What, if any, would your role on school committee be in addressing these issues?
Okay, so Serena, we are going to be talking about this a little bit tomorrow night as a board, about number 1, seeing if we could make a statement as a group about what's going on now, and we're all aware of what's happening, and we want to come together as one voice and make a collective statement about it. I think we need to maybe move to a more active role and taking a look at what our curriculum looks like, what our hiring practices are.
30 seconds.
Yeah, it's going to evolve just a deep dive into everything that we're doing and seeing where we can improve, which I'm sure that we can. I could talk for
15
another
seconds.
2 or 3 minutes about some of the things that we are doing and have done. So it's all of that together.
Another question. What are some of the strengths that you see currently on school committee right now?
Well, one strength is I think we have a group of people that have a lot of respect for each other. And we work very collaboratively as a board, and everybody brings a skill set that combined really makes us a very effective group. And we don't spend any time on drama or personalities or anything like that, so that we can really get the work done. We have a great relationship with our superintendent and the administrative team that he's brought on. So I would say, you know, starting right there, being able to just really focus on the work is a big plus. And the collection of people that we have, we all bring something different to the table. And based on what we all have to offer collectively, I think it makes us a very effective group.
Thank you. Okay, so I think, I'm not sure if this will be your last question, but again, community, this is your last question. Community participation obviously can be sort of an issue in local government, and folks who you know, do you feel that increased participation would impact the board, the school board, and how would school committee rather, and how do you think that impact would be felt? Would it be beneficial?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we probably have had that as a goal almost every single year since I've been on school committee, is especially how to reach some of the people that we have found have been more difficult to reach. And we're constantly looking for better and different ways to reach all populations in the school district, because voices matter and we need to hear those voices and respond to them. But I think somebody might be unmuted. So I'm hearing some other.
I'm sorry, if someone is on the line and they are not muted, could you please mute your Zoom? Thank you. I'm sorry, Lori.
Yeah, no problem. So absolutely, I think the more input that we have from the community, and we're always looking for it in different ways. I mean, certainly at every single meeting of ours, we have time for public comment. I know the superintendent hosts a lot of forums whenever we're doing a big project, for instance, the building committee.
15 seconds.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do our best with the outreach, and we're always looking to improve that because we don't always see the participation that we'd like to see.
Lori, thank you. Thank you very much for answering questions. We're going to try to loop back to Lakshmi and see if she's ready to take the stage and answer a few questions.
Thank you, Megida. Sorry for I think it was Wi-Fi issue, so I'm using my phone now, so I think we should be good.
No worries. So let's try this again. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement, and that's a much stronger connection, so I think people will be able to hear it now. So let's try take two. Opening statement, please.
Thank you. So my name is Lakshmi Krishnan. I have lived in Ashland with my husband and 2 kids for 20 plus years. I am a CPA by profession. I work as VP of tax at an insurance company in Boston. In my profession, I am trained to analyze an issue, look at the regulatory authorities, and make a solution, come up with the solution based on facts and the regulatory authority. So that's what I am bringing to the planning board. I am not a candidate running for re-election. I am new to this role. The other thing is I am also not associated with any real estate development, construction, or any realty company. So I come with no conflict of interest. Over the years, personal and professional life permitting, I have tried to be part of public service, whether it be the chair of the Ashland Culture Council for 2 terms, or volunteering for AEFI, the Dragonfly Festival, Farmers Market, Corner Spot, etc. Now with my kids all grown up, I have more time, and I feel it's the right time to provide more to the community. And when my experiences when I volunteered has introduced me to our town governing board and members of other committees, and they've all inspired me to come forward and participate in public service. So that's why I am running for the member of the planning board, and I'm very excited.
30 seconds.
I'm very excited, but I know I am new to this role. I have a lot to learn, but I'm very excited and driven to be part of the board. That's it, Makita.
Thank you. And we could hear you loud and clear that time, so that was good. We do have a viewer question. This one's coming in from Florence Siddell, and this is for planning board candidate. People in town are working on a tree bylaw. Would you be willing to support to stop big developers from clear cutting large swaths of woods in Ashland to accomplish Ashland's net zero goal?
Again, as I mentioned, I am new to this role, so I have a lot to learn based on what the advice and what I learned during the process, I will make the right decision that meets the best interest of our town and what the state and local guidelines are. So as I do not know much about tree stumping laws, so I am not in a position to take a stance now. But if I am a part of the board, I will make sure I educate myself and make the right decision in the best interest of the town. In the best interest of the town.
Okay, thank you. Another question that's come in is, what is one change you would like to see happen on the committee and board that you're running for as soon as you take office? And what would you do to personally make sure that that change is accomplished?
I think as part of my learning process, I did attend a couple of the planning board meetings, and I feel like participation was at a low. So I think that's a big thing, because if participation helps with making our town much better, right? So I would first encourage, I would try to find ways to improve participation, whether it's communicating more on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I think we need to use those mediums, especially during COVID-19. I think the Zoom environments work much better. And through Zoom, people using Zoom gives the option for people to stay at home and still participate in town matters. I think that's where I would go. Participation seems to be the most important thing I see that we need for our town, for our board now.
Okay. What is most important to you about being on this particular board?
So I think for me, first, as I mentioned, I need to learn a lot, but I want to be able to make decisions with the help of my members, to support them and make decisions that are beneficial to the town according to state and local laws, and also make sure our town is changing and adapting to change as required. Because our town is a vibrant town. It has grown a lot. A lot of people have moved in from different
30 seconds.
Different parts. So with increased population moving in comes increased resource needs. So we need to be sure that we cater to it without in any way
15 seconds.
The town. So also we have to preserve Ashland's history and Ashland's culture. So I think that's what I would strive for if I'm part of the board.
Stop, please. Thank you, Lakshmi. And I'm glad we could get you your technical issues cleared up, because now we are about to go into closing statements. Each candidate has the opportunity to make a closing statement, 1 minute each candidate. So Lakshmi, I'm going to have you turn your video back off, and I will be we'll be going in reverse of alphabetical order for the closing statements, and I will be keeping time. So the first person that we'll have for the 1 minute statement is Lori Tosti. Lori Tosti, could you put your video back on, please?
Hello.
Hello. Please start your 1 minute closing statement.
Thanks, Makita. In closing, I am very enthusiastic about continuing my work on school committee. We do 3 things on school committee. We handle the budget, we write policy, and we hire and evaluate and fire, if necessary, the superintendent. So those are our 3 big powers, and I am excited for the momentum that we're on. I am excited about continuing to work on this team, to work through what's going on right now in the pandemic. And mostly, I want students to feel seen and heard and supported and encouraged. And really, it's that keeps me still here after all this time. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up is David Rosenbloom. And Laurie, if you could turn your video off so we can bring David to the stage. David, hello. You have 1 minute starting now.
Okay, thank you, Makita. And thank you, everybody who's watching. Again, I'm David Rosenbloom. I'm running for re-election for assessor, and I would appreciate, I enjoy being an assessor, and I think it's the assessing department, as I said, does basically almost all the work, but I think it's important, an oversight basis to review and make some changes. Sometimes we use abatements and applications for exemptions and so on. And I look
30 seconds.
forward to doing that in the next 3 years. And though we're unopposed, people talking, I really do appreciate
15.
it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next to the stage, David, don't forget to turn your video off. Thank you. Next to the stage, Lakshmi Krishnan.
So I would like to start by saying that I am very excited and looking forward to be a part of the planning board. I am looking forward to learning and growing with the board and making help support the board in whatever decisions we make. I want to thank Makita, you and the organizers for giving us this forum to introduce ourselves and make ourselves known. I want to thank the sponsors and WACA-TV too. And I want to also thank my other members in this forum and wish them all luck in their roles that they are planning to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Your video, great. And next to the stage, Ron Eskovitz. Ron, you have 1 minute as soon as you get your video working.
I'm Keita, thank you. So just in closing, I'd like to say, obviously I think the Board of Health is an important position, not any more important than any of the others, but, I devote my life to that. My daughters are devoting their lives to healthcare as well. They're in training right now. So I think, it's an important function of the town. And I've enjoyed doing it. I think in the last 3 years, I really think I've received more from doing it than I've given. I'd also like to encourage other people to run for elected public or just volunteer on town committees. And if anyone has of the residents have any issues that they think fall under our purview, it's easy to get a hold of us, and we'd like to try to help any way we can.
Thank you, Ron. Please turn off your video so that I can call Carolyn Bell to the stage.
Well, I'd like to thank the town for its support of the library. I think it's a very fine library, but I want you to know that the library is still functioning. If you're not computer literate, you can call up the library, ask for a certain book, it'll be delivered outside. And if you are computer literate, you can access materials online from not only our 41 member libraries, but other system libraries as well, 7 other systems. We have Canopy, which means you can, in this town, if you have a card, you can stream 4 films a month or documentaries. We're going to have Hoopla, find out what that is by calling. And Paula also has a new program of renting bestsellers. So we will keep the original copy, and then when the push is over, it'll go back to a rental agency, and you never have to wait 6 months for a bestseller.
Carolyn, thank you. We're at time, and we are at time for all the candidates for the uncontested races. Thank you so much for joining us for this portion of the program. In a few minutes, we're going to have the select board candidates debate, but we're going to take a little break, a 1 to 2 minute break while we get that set up. So again, thank you so much to all the candidates running for the uncontested positions here in town. And we'll be right back with the select board debate. Hello, and welcome back to the Ashland 2020 Local Election Debate Forum. Just a reminder that this debate event is a project of the We Love Ashland Citizens Committee and Friends of the Ashland Library in cooperation with WACA-TV. Again, I am Nikita Keegan, and I'm your moderator for this evening. Thanks for tuning in for the contested race portion of our program, which is for select board candidates. We'll be getting into that in a moment, but I just want to remind you again that voting is occurring in Ashland on Wednesday, June 24th at Ashland High School from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Please note the change in hours. I'll say that again. If you want to vote in person, That's happening between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. The last day to register to vote is Friday, June 12th. You can request a ballot to vote by mail. What you can do is go to the ashlandmass.com website, and you can download and fill out a 2020 municipal election early ballot application. If you can't print it out, you can just send any written form of correspondence with your signature requesting a ballot to Town Hall. They cannot process those applications without your signature. So make sure that if you do send a note that you do include a signature on that. You can also email your application to townclerkoffice@ashlandmass.com. When you do get your vote, your mail-in ballot, or rather your voted ballot, you can place that in the payment box at Town Hall. Just make sure, again, that your signature is on that ballot and on that ballot envelope. That's very important. And please do not fold the ballot. It does fit very nicely into the box. For more information about voting, please visit our town website, ashlandmass.com. And again, at the beginning of the debate, I did impress upon folks how important it is to make sure that your voice is heard. It's especially important on the local level. If you want to see or have the town that you'd like to see, it's important that you get out there and vote. So whether you vote by mail or get out there in person, make sure that your voice is heard and make sure to vote. All right, a refreshment of the rules, and then we'll introduce the candidates. So again, each candidate gets 2 minutes for opening statements. Each question gets a 60-second response, 90 seconds for more complex questions at my discretion. And there is an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal following the completion of the responses, which seems we have 2 folks for contested office. We will be following that. We are also still wanted to remind you that we are collecting questions from the public. You can, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, on the Around the Clock page, you can type your questions there, and we'll try to make sure that we get to it, although we have a lot of questions here. And also, if you're not so good with the Facebooks, you can drop us a question on Candidates Forum at friendsoftheapl.com. Lastly, again, before I introduce candidates and get started, I will ask for your patience. This is a brand new format, and we are at the mercy of technology and a litany of other factors. We're going to do the best we can to make sure that voters can make the most informed decision. But like I said, please be patient. We are still kind of working out the kinks, and this is brand new to all of us. That being said, I'd like to introduce 2 of our candidates for Select Board this evening, Stephen Mitchell and Preston Crow. So we're trying to decide who can go first, and both were extremely deferential to each other and extremely polite. So I suggested a coin toss. So I will ask gentlemen to pick a side. This is a good old-fashioned penny that I will be flipping to determine who makes their opening statement first. Gentlemen, would you like to pick a side?
I'll choose heads.
I wanted tails.
And here we are. So I'm flipping the coin. And it is heads. No. Before we get started, also a little improvement to our earlier format. When you are running low on time, I will be giving you a 30-second warning on a card, and then a 15-second warning on a card, newly made up from the WACA prop department in my house. So to help us keep time and keep us honest. All right, so with heads, go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you, Makita, and nice to be here this evening. Good evening. My name is Steve Mitchell, and I am running for re-election to the Ashland Select Board. Thank you to the good folks at WACA-TV, the We Love Ashland Committee, and the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for hosting this event. And I would also like to acknowledge and thank all the candidates for their willingness to serve on behalf of the residents of Ashland. My family has lived in Ashland for 45 years, setting roots in 1975. My better half, Bonnie, is the current chair of the Library Board of Trustees. Our son, Matt, is a graduate of Ashland High School and lives in Boston with his family. I have served in both the official and grassroots side of community life, serving on the Charter Review Committee, the Finance Committee, and currently on the Select Board. I'm a founding member of both the Ashland Farmers Market and Arts Ashland Alliance the group that puts on the Dragonfly Festival. I'm also a member of the Ashland Lions Club. As I reflect on the past 9 years as a select board member, we have accomplished much, and I am proud of our many accomplishments, including establishing financial policies, creating an OPEB trust fund, increasing our stabilization fund balances, our AAA bond rating, regular increases to senior tax exemptions, enhanced human services resources, land purchases and preservation, infrastructure improvements, our green community status, and increased public safety staffing. This is why I am running for re-election. Simply what qualifies me for re-election is a track record of community engagement, collaboration, and accomplishment. To continue the work for a smart, safe, and sustainable Ashland, I ask for your vote on June 24th. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Preston, you can start with your opening statement.
Good evening. I'm Preston Crow. Makita, I want to thank you, as well as the We Love Ashland Citizens Committee, Friends of the Ashland Library, and WACA for hosting this debate. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to watch and consider our town's future. This is certainly a historic time with COVID-19 changing everything, and now protests over discrimination and police brutality. And at this very moment, we even have a George Floyd vigil happening on Main Street. At the same time, we continue to move ahead and look to our local future. And tonight, we consider the leadership as we move forward. We bought our house in Ashland over 20 years ago, and my son is now finishing 4th grade at Mendes. You probably know me from the planning board, where I've served for 15 years, working to improve new developments in Ashland. I've also served on the Sustainability Committee and on the Upper Charles Trail Committee. I love bicycling, nature, Legos, and science fiction. I want to work for a better future for Ashland. I want a future that is sustainable so that we protect our environment and natural resources for the generations to follow us. I want a town that is affordable so that we don't push out our seniors and struggling families. I want a community that is livable with great treasures for all to enjoy. I've always tried to do my part to contribute to my community, whether through the roles I've already mentioned, by cleaning up during Green Up Ashland Day, or helping as a foster parent. Now, I'm asking for your support and your vote so that I can bring my service to the Ashland Select Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Preston. So we'll be fielding a number of questions, but one thing that's a little different about this round than in previous rounds is that the candidates have prepared challenge questions for each other, which I will be asking on each other's behalf. And so we're going to start out with some of those challenge questions now. For Steve Mitchell, Preston Crow, one of Preston Crow's challenge questions for you is sustainability is something we both mention on our campaign signs, and it is clearly a core value for Ashland. What have you done in your personal life to be more sustainable?
Well, I am, like Preston, a bicycle enthusiast as well. I believe that that we live in a household as a socially conscious or environmentally conscious manner as possible. For me, sustainability is a very, very broad discussion. When I look at sustainability, certainly for the town, that incorporates financial sustainability. It incorporates sustainability of programs and services. It incorporates, of course, environmental sustainability as well. So I think it's a core foundation for the town to be moving forward, for all of us to embrace the concepts of sustainability on all levels. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one point of operation, gentlemen, if you would care to have a rebuttal to a question or such, you should let me know, and then we can start the clock for that. So Preston, I have a challenge question from Steve for you. As chair of the planning board, how have you spearheaded affordable housing for some of our more vulnerable elderly residents and helped protect us from the large unfriendly 40B projects like the Valentine Estate or in recent developments such as 21 Main Street, 12 Pond Street, Alden Street, and 81 West Union Street?
Affordable housing has always been something we've looked at on the planning board and done our best to add as much as possible. One of the things we've done is a affordable housing study and created a plan for the town that as we move forward with that plan and meet the goals within that plan, it provides immunity from 40B projects so that the town is not forced to accept projects that are not desirable. We have included 10% affordable in the Cirrus apartments above the train station. And we've been talking about doing a bylaw that would require affordable housing in new developments. Unfortunately, that got pushed back both with changes in the planning staff and now with the COVID-19, we're not bringing any new zoning to Springtown meeting.
So rebuttal here.
Okay, start the clock.
So the question, Preston, really went to specific projects and how the planning board or you as the chair advocated for affordable housing in those specific units, none of which I think have any affordable housing except for the actions and the advocacy of the select board. So if you could speak to that process as far as you as chair of the planning board.
We have advocated for affordable housing in pretty much every project. Often we don't have the ability to force it because a lot of the projects are by right. And if we say we'll only allow this project with affordable housing, we're not sure we'll get any project. And sometimes the decision is we want to have the project.
Okay, next question. The role of a committee member or a select board member is to represent the Ashland community in decisions. In what way will your community outreach help to bring you the community's perspectives to the select board's decisions?
Who's that question for?
That is for Preston.
Having openness on the select board is one of my core values. When I've been on the planning board, I think one of my strongest points is making sure that everybody who comes to the planning board knows that they will be heard and that their opinions will be considered. And I think that encourages more people to participate. Also, I make a point of being involved with pretty much every activity within town so that I'm available for people to talk to outside of town, outside of formal hearings and processes. And I think I'm very approachable and visible within the community so that I can bring people's ideas and thoughts when they don't want to come to the select board meetings directly.
Steve, I'm going to ask you the same question. Just to reiterate, the role of a committee member, a select board member, one of the critical roles of a select board member is to represent the Ashland community in decisions. In what ways would your community outreach help you to bring the community's perspectives to committee discussions?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It goes to certainly community participation. You know, I've spent 9 years, in essence, outreaching to the community. I spend a lot of time out in Ashland. We do the bulk of our purchasing in Ashland, so I'm engaging with residents all the time. As a founder of the Farmers Market for the past 8 years, the interactions that occur there are very valuable, lots of great discussions that occur. So for me, it really is just part of the territory. It's part of the way I choose to interact with people. And I enjoy the engagements, and that's how I get my information and how I develop, a sense of community sense.
Thank you, Steve. The next question again is for you both, but I'll start with Preston, or rather I'll start with Steve because I started with Preston last time. This question is from Florence Siddell. Karen Spilka says that every new policy should be viewed through a climate change lens. What would you do in Ashland to combat climate change?
So I think we are focused and directed in looking through that lens. We have as a member of the board, we've supported the net zero resolution. We're continuing to support the initiatives that support net zero, that support the resiliency that we need as a community to combat and be prepared for climate change. I think one of the things that we need to certainly be aware of as we have these conversations about climate change is equity, and to make sure that everybody has access. Folks or residents that may not be able to afford electric vehicles or ground sourced heat pumps, we need to make sure that everybody is included in the access to climate change resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Preston, same question.
First, I want to take issue with the not everybody can afford an electric vehicle. Our Nissan Leaf, we purchased used for about $6,000. Electric vehicles and other sustainable options are available, and they're available at low cost if you look for them. So starting with the assumption of I can't afford that is the wrong way. You've got to start with the assumption of how can I make this work for me? And sometimes it won't. But for people to be sustainable, you start looking at what you can do. As a town, we need to lead by being sustainable, especially with our new building projects. With the police and fire building, we started off, the committee was about to approve a very traditional high energy intensity solution until Matt Marshquist and I lobbied heavily to change to a geothermal system that will be much more energy efficient. And we got the committee to change their opinion on that.
So just a slight rebuttal on
About 30 seconds. Yep.
Sure. So, I do stand by my statement regarding the affordabilities of access to net zero or affordable net zero buildings or net zero housing for that matter. And regarding the public safety building, that was a process. Matt Marshquist was a strong advocate to a committee that didn't have a whole lot of knowledge about geothermal, and he was instrumental.
Stop. I'm sorry, Steve. That's the end of your time. So we'll have to move on to the next question. And the next question is another challenge question. And this is a challenge question from Steve to Preston. Or rather, this is sorry. Speak to the programs and services that the town has developed in response to COVID-19. What have you supported and how would you improve?
COVID-19 is something that came out of, it was a total surprise for everyone. And I think the town has done a fairly good job. I especially like the restaurant program where meals were purchased for people through the Ashland Emergency Fund from local restaurants, supporting both the businesses and people in need. The schools have done a tremendous job with providing food and as well as education. I don't have any large faults with the town. The challenge now is to move forward and to open up our businesses and our economy and our government in a way that keeps everyone safe and allows the economy to recover at the same time.
Preston has a challenge question for Steve, another challenge question. The Ashland Upper Charles Trail Committee has had a defined trail route through town since 2016. Why has the select board not moved forward to have town staff talk with property owners to obtain easements so that the trail can be built?
Well, I think in all fairness to both town staff and to the select board, I think in many ways, the Upper Charles Trail, unfortunately, has really not been focused on the task at hand, which is to provide the initial pieces of a actual trail. There's been two areas that have been identified as sections that could be utilized fairly quickly, and trails don't get built very quickly, but there's two sections that have the potential to do that. And right now we're waiting for, at this point, we're waiting for potential funding for grants and so on. But as far as the reaching out to landowners for approval for a trail to run through, we've offered to do that. That's been very clear. Town staff has spent many hours working with the committee, both in terms of applying for grants, working on attempting to move this forward. And I don't think that this is a very simple project.
Stop. I'm sorry, Steve. Your time. You've met your time.
May I rebut?
30 seconds.
Yeah, we have had a defined trail since I think late 2015, and then we came to the selectmen and said, "This is the trail." And then the pushback was, "But how do you know this is really where the trail is going to go?" So we spent $60,000 on a consultant who said, "Yeah, that's the trail." And then we kept saying, we need town staff to go out and obtain easements, because if we don't obtain easements, we can't apply for grants and funding to build it. And the one place that we could do is off of Pond Street, where it would connect to Sherburne, but that would be a trail to nowhere until Sherburne develops theirs. So we've really been going in circles waiting for easements.
Okay. All right, next question. It's a viewer question, again from Serena Lilly. This is for both of you, so we'll take turns answering it. To each select board candidate, in light of the recent police killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, can you please provide your thoughts on racism in Ashland? Any changes, if any, that you feel should be made to Ashland Police Department, and what, if any, changes you feel need to be made within Ashland to address racism? What would your role on the select board be in addressing this issue?
So who's starting, Nikki?
That's a good question. So I think Preston was the last one to speak. So Steve, you can go ahead.
Sure. So thank you. So just the other day, I did tape a statement on behalf of the select board, along with Chief Alfano and Town Manager Herbert, to address, I think, what's obviously become a tipping point in our society. And the reality is, I don't know what it's like to be Black in America. What I can do is to listen, to learn, and to dialogue. And I think it's critical that we continue, certainly not to be silent, but to dialogue and to best reach out to our community for to start this conversation. And it's not just on the police department. I believe it's incumbent on all of us to really sit down, to learn, and to self-reflect.
Preston?
Yes. Right now there's a vigil downtown for George Floyd. I would be there if I weren't here. And clearly, we need to have a dialogue with the people of color community within Ashland, and make sure that we really are doing things right. I think we're doing things right, but I haven't had that conversation, and I don't know. And we need to have that conversation and make sure. And then with the police department, we need to make sure that the police department understands, and that every member of the police department understands, that if somebody is abusing their authority and mistreating someone or discriminating against someone, it's the job of the other officers to step in and stop that. And beyond that, we just need to be listening to the community and making sure we're doing outreach so that we hear the stories, because I don't think a lot of people of color.
I'm sorry, Preston, your time is up.
All right.
Thank you. So another question for you both. Something I asked earlier for folks with the uncontested seats, but I want to hear from y'all. And we'll start with Steve. What are the top 3 issues the board that facing the board, the select board, that you think they'll be facing over the coming year? Let me try that again. So what are the top 3 issues the select board, in your opinion, you think will be facing in the following year?
So I think without question, I think the impacts of COVID-19 are going to continue for several years. Fortunately, the board and in conjunction with the finance committee and the school committee developed financial policies that allowed us to build up a stabilization fund that's going to help us to weather through a certain period of time without layoffs and without cutting of programs and services, depending on how long this continues. So that's number 1, the impacts of COVID-19. Number 2, I think sustainability. Sustainability on all levels is important, is a key issue. And then affordability for our vulnerable population, for our seniors, and the ability to maintain those programs and services for those safety net situations.
Thank you. Preston, again, top 3 issues you see for the select board coming up over the coming year.
I think Steve hit it fairly well. I think the finances of the town under the leadership of Michael Herbert are doing quite well. And while it's going to be a struggle to deal with the cuts due to COVID-19, we're in a strong position going into this. So I'm optimistic. Sustainability is a huge issue as we move to go from net zero being a nice resolution to something where we're actually doing something. And then the other major thing is the building projects in town, especially the public safety building, making sure that we can provide that without having too large of an increase in taxes. This is something that we've been talking about since I first came to Ashland. So it's time to move forward. And if we don't do it now, it's just going to get more expensive.
The second part of that question for you both, and I'll bring it back to Steve, is the 3 issues that you named. Pursuant to the 3 issues that you named, what specific skills, talents, and experience do you think you'll bring to uniquely address those issues?
Well, I think obviously my past 9 years of experience being on the board, working on a variety of the issues that have faced us over the past 9 years. Back in 2003, the stabilization fund for the town of Ashland was a little bit over $4,000. Today, it's over $7 million. So, those are the awareness, the understanding, the work that's been done over many years in collaboration with many people is, what I bring to this seat on the board.
Okay. Preston, same question based on your response to the top 3 issues that you provided a few minutes ago, what skills, talents, and experiences do you feel that you bring that will uniquely address those issues?
For sustainability and moving forward on net zero, I've been on the sustainability committee. I was a founding member of the sustainability committee. And I'm not on it now, but I was part of the Ashland Solar Challenge, where we worked to improve solar power for residents of Ashland. I've worked on a lot of these issues. I have a good sense of how to move them forward and do so in a way that is affordable for the town. And in most cases, ends out saving money for the town and the residents. Of public safety building, my experience on the planning board will be useful in moving forward on the other side of the project from the select board. And with COVID-19, just the sense of being open and listening to people and trying to make the right judgment there.
Thank you. Another question for you both has to do with community input. So in your opinion, what would be a way that you would improve community input for the board, for the select board, specifically so that people know that their voices are being heard? Steve, I'll start with you.
Sure. So input, community engagement is always a challenge. We talk about it a lot. We talk about how we can improve it. Our latest survey, the survey done in 2019, the citizen survey, roughly 30% of residents have either watched a meeting or attended a meeting. Only 30% of our residents. So, you know, the challenge obviously is to reach out. I think individually, what I attempt to do certainly is engage with people as much as possible. But I think we have opportunities, you know, in this new age of Zoom. I think we have some opportunities to start to look at this technology to increase that accessibility. I mean, we're all busy people. This might be the option to allow a family to participate.
Thank you, Steve. Preston, same question.
Yes, I was also going to hit on Zoom. I think one thing that is great is the ability for people from their homes to join and participate in public meetings. At the same time, this is very limiting for people who don't feel comfortable in the Zoom environment. So as we open up our government, we need to look to continue both as a hybrid of both the Zoom and the in-person meetings and get the best of both. But the key thing with public meetings is to have a reputation where people know when they show up, they're not just going to be politely told, thank you for your opinion, and then move on, but they'll be listened to and considered. And that is something that has been one of my core values for 15 years on the planning board, and that's what I'll bring to the select board. And beyond that, it's simply a matter of being out in the community and listening and talking to people and bringing back all of that to the board.
Stop. Okay. Thank you, Preston. Another question for you both. How do you see the role of the board, the select board, interacting with town staff generally? More collaborative, sort of, is there room for more collaboration? Less? I'll start with Preston on that one.
Town staff, working with town staff is very important. And I'm going to take this from a slightly different angle than you asked it, because I think one of the key most important things is the quality of the staff that you hire. If you hire the right people, you can really get great value out of the staff, and they can do tremendous things. I think we have a spectacular town manager right now, and we're reaping the rewards of that through the financial planning that he's bringing and the leadership that he provides. And while we oversee town staff in a supervisory role, it's also very much a collaborative role where we're working together with them, and they can say, we think this is a great idea. What do you think? And we can move ahead and work together in setting the right agenda.
Steve?
So in my tenure on the board, I've had the opportunity to hire 2 town managers to be part of that process. The first being Tony Schiavi. Tony in turn hired Michael Herbert as his assistant town manager. And it was clear when Tony left Ashland that it was an easy transition to bring Michael in. And I think he's demonstrated that very well to the community at large. You know, working with staff, we work very closely together with the town manager. Staff that he is responsible for, we also work with, but typically it's done through the town manager. We don't normally get engaged in day-to-day activities or operations. But again, he's done such a great job of hiring. He's brought a lot of gender diversity to key department roles, and I think we've got you know, a very cohesive and stable staff, particularly in our department head roles.
Okay, thank you, Steve. The next question that I have for you both, again, has to do with essentially your other experiences. So what other experiences have you had on a different board or different committee or different volunteer opportunity other than select board that might prepare you for tenure on the select board? So this is actually a question for both. I'll start with, did I start with Preston? I'm sorry. I can't remember who I started with last.
You started with Preston.
I started with Preston, so I want to start with you, Steve. Sorry.
Right. So prior to my tenure on the select board, I served on a charter review committee. At that time in my life, my son had gone off to college. I had the opportunity to get involved. Started at the charter review committee, a great way to understand the workings of the town and all of its components. From there, my friend Bob Powderly convinced me to join the finance committee, which is invaluable foundation for being on the select board. So it just became, for me, I think a very reasonable flow through a series of committees to get to the select board. And I think I brought that knowledge and that information and that experience to the board at this time. Thank
you, Steve. Preston, same question.
Yes, I've already talked a lot about my experience on the planning board. I, at one point, organized a private environmental group pushing for stretch energy code, which led to the formation of the sustainability committee. I am a member of the board of trustees of my church, which is in Sudbury. And but one thing that I think helps is being in touch with a number of different areas of the community. And being a foster parent, I get to interact with a whole different social circle of people with completely different life backgrounds and struggles, and develop relationships with those families. And it gives a very different and broader experience of what life is like in Ashland.
Thank you, Preston. We touched upon, and again, this is a question for you both. We touched upon a little bit about how technology can improve some things, the way the board communicates with constituents and such. But how might technology advances in general help make this board, select board, more efficient or more effective? And Preston, I'll start with you on that one.
Well, I love technology. You know, I started working with computers when the town bused me to the one school across the town that had Apple II computers when I was a kid. And now I have a computer science degree and a job working at Dell in Hopkinton. there's a lot we can do with technology. A lot of the things directly with the board are constrained by the open meeting law, and we need to work with our elected representatives to perhaps tweak that in a few ways so that we can take advantage of some of the new technology that we've been taking advantage under this state of emergency, and but also use the town website and other electronic resources to be a more efficient and effective way of communicating, not just providing information to the town, people in the town, but bringing information back. And I think we can do a lot more than we're doing
I'm
right now. And
sorry,
I'm looking forward to
Preston,
that.
your time is up.
That's good.
Steve?
So I actually, in a lot of ways, I agree with Preston in terms of certainly concerns about open meeting laws and the use of technology and concerns about that. That's obviously something that we would need to advocate to our legislative team at the State House. But I think there's certainly a mechanism that we can employ to get feedback through technology. I'm not gonna point to Facebook as that technology to use, but something that a mechanism for us to continue to get feedback from residents and be able to respond and have a true dialogue and not have it deteriorate into a bad conversation.
Thank you, Steve. And a follow-up to both of you for that question, and I'll start with Steve on this time. So we were talking about some of the changes to the open meeting laws, some things that have been put in place temporarily to accommodate the pandemic that we're experiencing right now. What other changes, specific changes, would you like to see to some of these open meeting laws or public records laws, or anything that would make the board more responsive and to constituents?
Well, I think, personally, I think there's a tremendous value in the open meeting law. I think it makes us accountable, it makes us transparent. I think that's very important. I think we've all had situations where we've unintentionally violated the open meeting laws and we've had to correct them. I think that's important to do that. I think it's we've gotten better. I think with maintaining our open meeting law requirements in terms of our agendas and having real good descriptions for agenda items. And we've gotten much better as a community in terms of responding to public record requests as well. So, I think these are very important aspects of what local government or all levels of government should be responsible for.
Thank you, Steve. 15 seconds to spare. Preston, same question.
Yeah, we have to be very careful with changing the open meeting law because it does a lot of good in keeping town government accountable to the residents. And I've long thought the one thing that we should have is being able to approve minutes by email. That way, minutes could be approved within days of the end of a meeting and posted, and there wouldn't be the big lag that there is now. And perhaps some of the consent agenda type things that the select board does could be done, approved by email, and then announced at the next meeting that this was approved by email. But beyond that, we want to make sure that any change we do is adding to the openness, not taking away. We want to allow people to participate electronically, but not take away for the people who can't do that and need to come to a meeting publicly.
Preston, you're out of time. Thanks.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so we have a question that we actually had for planning board, and the person actually requested that we ask the select board the same question. So you may have heard this earlier, and I hope you were both thinking of an answer because here it comes again. People in town are working on a tree bylaw. What would you be willing to support to stop big developers from clear cutting large swaths of woods in Ashland to accomplish Ashland's net zero goal? Start with you, Preston.
Yeah, I've actually been looking at this because I am on the planning board. I think this is a great idea. We've long had a problem with developers coming in and we have a bylaw that requires them to do a tree survey, but we usually end up waiving it because if they're regrading the property, there's nothing they can do to save a tree if they have to lower or raise the ground level. So with most subdivisions, they end out clear cutting, and it's saddening. With the new proposed bylaw, they would be required to do a tree inventory and replace all of the larger trees that they take down or contribute to a fund to have those replaced elsewhere in town. And I think that's a great idea. And I think it's one of our steps towards being carbon neutral in Ashland.
Thank you, Preston. Steve, go ahead.
So I certainly support the concept of a fund to replace trees. I think every development is different. You know, another ability to maintain a swash of trees is what we've done with the potential project at the Lot 2 of the Rail Transit District, where 20 acres is coming back to the town. That's preservation. We've spent a lot of time and money in purchasing and preserving properties. If you look at the Girl Scout property adjacent to the state park, Zero Tri Street, parts of the Rail Transit District, the Niccolo property at adjacent to the town forest. So I think it's a combination of things that we do to maintain our wealth of trees in town.
Thank you, Steve. Getting to the last couple of questions of the evening. I'm going to try to squeeze in one, maybe two more if we can. And this is, again, a question for you both. And we'll start with Steve on this one. Steve, why is it important for you to be on select board? What are some of the personal reasons that you have for serving on select board?
Well, I think it's, well, first of all, it's energizing for me. I'm enthused by the work. I think I've spent a lot of time, I spend a lot of time thinking about the issues. I spend a lot of time discussing the issues. And I think I've gotten to a place in my tenure, in my learning curve, where I'm better able to make a contribution to the board. And it's been a process for me. But also in many ways in my life, I've embraced challenges. And I find this to be one of the more challenging activities that I've ever taken on. So, you know, those are, you know, some of the reasons why I'm attracted to serving.
Thank you, Steve. Preston, what are some of the more personal reasons that you have for wanting to serve on select board?
I have found being on the planning board to be an incredibly rewarding experience. Through Metro West Regional Collaborative as a planning board member, I've gotten to develop relationships with elected officials from at the state level, from Ashland and the surrounding communities, and I'll be bringing that to the select board. But it's time for me to move on from the planning board. I need to do something different that can use my energies and reinvigorate things. The planning board is at a great state now. There are some really strong members, and it's time for me to move on. And I look forward to new challenges and bring some new ideas to the select board.
Well, thank you, Preston. We're coming up on 8:25, which means that we're almost ready to wrap up. Before we do, I'd like to remind folks that we do have closing statements in the reverse order of opening for 1 minute each candidate. And then we'll talk a little bit about, again, how to vote. But before we go into that, I do want to thank Steve Mitchell and Preston Crow for a wonderful debate and a real insight into what your views and opinions are and how you would serve the town of Ashland. with that, I think, Steve, you went first at the top of the hour.
I did.
So we are going to let Preston go ahead and give his 1-minute closing statement. Preston, please go ahead.
Thank you, Makita. And thank you, We Love Ashland and Friends of the Ashland Library and WACA for this debate opportunity. If you want any more information about me, please visit my website, votecrow.com, reach out to me on Facebook, or call or email me. And don't hesitate to contact me after the election too. If I didn't like talking about town issues, I wouldn't be seeking this position. I love talking to people. I want to work for a better future for Ashland. I want a future that is sustainable so that we protect our environment and natural resources for the generations to follow us. I want a town that is affordable so that we don't push out our seniors and struggling families. I want a community that is livable with great treasures for all to enjoy. I'm asking for your support. Please vote for me, Preston Crow, for Ashland Select Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Preston. Steve, please go ahead.
Good. Thank you, Makita. And again, thank you to the good folks at WACA-TV, We Love Ashland, and the Friends of the Public Library for hosting. If reelected, my goal is to continue to improve and enhance Ashland's community quality of life. And I mean this in the broadest sense. Our community quality of life includes fiscal and environmental sustainability, economic development, a balance between development and growth with our community values, support for our schools, increasing cultural and recreational opportunities, upgrading our public safety facilities, ensuring access to community services for all of our vulnerable residents, young and old, and ensuring that we treat all community members with respect and dignity. With the impacts of COVID-19, the vision and work of making Ashland a smart, safe, and sustainable community becomes even more critical. For more information about me, please go to my website, www.steve-forselectboard.com.
Sorry, Steve, stop.
I ask for your support and vote on June the 24th. Thank you.
Stop. Thank you. So at this time, I would like to thank all of the candidates that we've heard from this evening. The uncontested candidates, Carolyn Bell for Library Trustee, Ron Eskovitz for Board of Health, Lakshmi Krishnan for Planning Board, David Rosenbloom for Assessor, Lori Tosti for School Committee, and of course, our two Select Board candidates, Steve Mitchell and Preston Crow. At this time, I'd also like to thank you, the viewing audience, for joining us here on WACA tonight. And of course, thank We Love Ashland and the Friends of the Library for providing this vital community service. A quick reminder to all of you wonderful Ashland residents, if you care about the future of your community, get out there and vote. The town election will be held on Wednesday, June 24th at Ashland High School. Again, different hours, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., but you also have the option to vote by mail and to request a ballot. Please visit the town website, ashlandmass.com, for more information. On behalf of all of us here at WACA, We Love Ashland, and the Friends of the Library, thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.